So if you want to know when the next bullish run to the upside is going to happen in the markets, I have the indicator that can tell you when the next big move is likely to happen. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about the SPY, the S&P 500, on the weekly time frame using the MACD indicator. So what I've noticed is that when both the buyer and the seller lines cross above the 0 point histogram, it usually signifies a bullish run is about to happen. Let's take a look at history and see what it tells us. Before we go to the history of SPY, let's take a look at where we are at currently. So the buyer line is breaking above the 0 point histogram, but as you see, the seller line, which is the red line, is still below the 0 point histogram. So as of right now, it has not broke above it, and the seller line could run into some resistance here. So we have to watch the next few weeks to see if it's able to break above it or if it's gonna start a reversal from this area. Okay, let's scroll back to the past and see when it broke above the 0 point histogram, what happened after that. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so that brings us to the 2020 crash that we had in March of that year. You see that we have a crossover here. The buyer line breaks above and it holds above the 0 point histogram, and then the buyer line follows by breaking above on July 10th, 2020, which brings the SPY to 304.98. And as you see, after those two lines crossed above the 0 point histogram, you can see that we made a big push to the upside all the way up to 472.32, which is the all-time high. Okay, now let's look at more examples. So let's look at the beginning of 2019. We had a bullish crossover. We had the buyer line break above, and then the seller line broke above a few weeks later on March 22nd, 2019, which had the market at 265. SPY was at 265. And then from there, we had a bullish move all the way up to 324. Let's look at more examples. Here's another example. In 2016, we had the buyer line break above, and then the seller line broke above a few weeks later on April 22nd, 2016. And from there, we had a big bullish move to the upside, and it went from 185 to as high as 264 on this move. So let's look at another example. So right before that move happened, you see here in late 2015, we had the buyer line break above, but the seller line couldn't quite break above. By the time it slightly got above it, we were already showing weakness in the market, and it couldn't hold above the 0 point histogram. And then that brought us to a bearish crossover that led to some downside movement. Let's keep going to the past and see what else we can find. Alright, so again right here we had a bullish crossover of the buyer line going above the seller line on October 2011. And then the buyer line broke above the 0 point histogram, followed by the seller line breaking above the 0 point histogram with a lot of momentum on January 2012. And from there, SPY had a bullish move. It just kept going up from there. So that led to a big move that you can see right here on the charts. Let's go back even further, see what else we can find. Here it is, another one in 2010. Here's another bullish crossover at the end of 2010. We had the bullish crossover of the buyer line crossing above the seller line. And then the buyer line broke above the 0 point histogram, followed by the seller line breaking above the 0 point histogram, and that led to another bullish move on SPY right here. Let's go back even further, see what else we can find. Look at the 2008 crash. You see that we had a crossover here, and then the buyer line broke above the 0 point histogram. The seller line was still underneath, and it didn't break until July of 2009, so about right here. And that led to a big move to the upside. Let's go back even further and see what else we can find. So I went back as far as the 2000 crash that we had. You see here in the fall of 2000, we had the buyer and the seller line break below the 0 point histogram, and it maintained below the 0 point histogram for a couple years. It tried to break above in early 2002, but it got rejected once, twice, and it stayed below the 0 point histogram until May 2003. May 2003, it finally broke above the 0 point histogram, as you see the buyer line and the seller line break above it. And what happened after that? We had a big move to the upside. So as you can see, when the buyer and the seller line break above the 0 point histogram on the weekly time frame with momentum, it usually signifies that we're about to get a big move to the upside. So it's too early to say that that's going to happen as of right now. We only have the buyer line breaking above the 0 point histogram. The seller line is still below it. So I'm going to watch this closely and just see how the market reacts to this. I want to see if the red line, which is the seller line, can break above and hold above the 0 point histogram. Nothing is guaranteed in the market. This is just an observation I've made, and it almost always works and signifies a big bullish move is coming to the S&P 500. So I just wanted to share that with you guys. Let me know what you guys think. Go ahead and hit the like button, comment any questions you may have, and also hit the subscribe button if you want to see more market analysis as well as my day trading strategies that I'll be going over in detail in future videos. So that's it for this video. Thank you guys for watching.